right, well, another episode of the Mission of God for the Family. I believe we're at episode 12. And this morning I want to talk about just when we first are presented with the image of God in the Bible, that one of the things that we see right off the bat is the plurality and the unity, the oneness and the plurality right at the beginning, when God begins talking about us being made in the image of God. And it's really important to understand because it ends up affecting um, the way that you think about your kids, the way that you think about everything, when you understand, excuse me, when you understand the diversity with the and the unity that you end up finding in the family. So um, in Genesis 1, when verses 26 through 28 is what we're going to look at. It says, "And God said, let us." Now notice, us is plural, obviously. So God says, let us, plural, make God in our, plural, image. Right? So he's talking about himself in the plural, after our likeness, and let them, plural, talking about the mankind, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Right, so the dominion is something for all people, but it's also for us as a people, the plural. So God, then it switches to the singular. So God, singular, created man, singular, in his own image. In the image of God created him, singular. Male and female created he them. Right? So you've got this switch back and forth between plural and singular and plural to communicate that Adam was made in the image of God, that Eve was made in the image of God, that all of their descendants will be in the image of God, that there's not image of God lost as people are born just because they're younger or something, but also to show, oh, and then it talks about it in the plural. Adam and Eve together are the image of God. Adam and Eve as a family are the image of God, right? So God, singular, created man in his own image, singular, and the image of God created he him, singular, male and female created he them, right? So the singular and the plural are both imago Dei. And God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, plural, right? That there's the pluralization, the growing nature of the human race is a part of the image of God, right? Because God is infinite. You can't just have a single created thing that is a true reflection of him. So instead, it's mankind, as the corporate mankind, working through time, multiplying, and there's more and more and more, because the image of God is such that it takes a lot of different created things together to reflect all of the different aspects of who God is. Right? The image of God is presented to us, and it's presented as a family. Right? It's presented as a family and as individuals. Right? So we're created to live and exist. But notice one of the things that we're created to do as families, right, which is rule. Right? We're created to have dominion. The image of God, plural, is given dominion. Right? We're created to exist and rule in families. And um, there's a number of things. I mean, there's been a long debate about what it means to be made in the image of God. And there's a lot of aspects to it. Generally, when somebody says, I think this is what it means, it's not that you look at it and say, oh, no, that's not true. Usually you look at it and say, well, yeah, that's part of it, right? Because there's so many different things. But one of the things we see right out the bat is that it means that you're going to have dominion, you're going to be creative, and you're going to use words, right? Because that's what we've seen God do up till this point when he creates man in his image. We've seen him create things, all things. Then we've seen him take dominion over things, or he gets hold of things, he transforms them into something new. And we've seen him use words to do it, right? So we've seen him use physical force or spiritual force, whatever you would want to call it. But we've also seen him use words. Uh, so there's an artistic expression, a creative expression, both in what have traditionally been called the plastic arts, though plastic has changed its name to now mean, something made of corn, that you melt down, and chemical compound made of corn that can be easily shaped and then hardened. But plastic used to just mean, physically shaped art. Uh, so uh, all of the different art forms that are expressed by the image of God are expressed because we're the image of God. So this means when you have children that you are raising, imago Dei, you're raising kids who are created to have dominion, to take dominion, to care for things, to transform things. And so the what you're aiming them at is fruitful, multiplying dominion. And that changes the way you think about your kids, and changes what you decide to do and what you don't decide to do. Do you let them get lizards? Do you not let them get lizards to raise? I remember talking to one parent who said he didn't want to get his kids pets because he knew he was still sad about when his pets died when he was a kid, right? And you think, okay, I get the sentiment, because it's hard to watch your kids go through something difficult. I remember, when my daughter's rabbit died, and how hard that was for her, and how hard it was to watch. Um, uh, but I also remember when she had same daughter had a goldfish die, and we took it to the toilet and we poured it in the toilet, and said, "Oh, he's been a good fish. We're grateful for him." And we flushed the toilet, and she said, "In the resurrection, is he going to swim back up the toilet?" Which is a great question. Um, so, uh, and of course, I just said, "That's exactly what's going to happen, honey." So, uh, but you have the difficulties that come with pets, right? It's hard. They have to learn responsibility. There's all sorts of things. It's emotionally painful, right? But it also is part of what they're created for, is to learn to take dominion. And they have to learn how to control sentimentality, or their own sentiment, their own emotions. And one of the ways that you do that is by having pets, right? And so uh, but maybe you're not in a situation to have pets, but there's other things that you can give them to learn how to take dominion. You're also aiming them at a fruitful life, a multiplying life. The expectation is that um, that most kids are going to grow up, get married, have kids, and that's a good thing. And it can be hard at times for people to say, "Well, I don't really want them to go, though. I'm going to miss them." Well, that's true. That's true, and maybe we needed pets when we were young to learn how to control our sentimentality. But the purpose of our kids is to have dominion, to find things that God has made and bring it to its intended end. That's what dominion does. It gets hold of things and it brings it to its intended end. It does it through words. It does it creatively, artistically. There's lots of things about that. But understand, and then as a family unit all together, we're also created to reflect God and rule together, and that takes fellowship, right? The reason that the Father, the Son, and the Spirit can have dominion together is they're in perfect fellowship. There's no competition between the Father and the Son for who's going to get to rule, um, because the Son comes saying, "I'm here to do the will of my Father." The Father comes saying, "I've sent my Son, glorify him." Right? He created all things for the Son, to Christ, through Christ, to Christ, and for Christ. All things are created in him, for him. And that's because the Father is glorifying the Son. Well, when the Son comes, he always speaks in a way that glorifies his Father. "I'm here doing the will of my Father." So that the rivalry is what gets in the way of uh, mom and dad being able to rule a household together well, right? Rivalry gets in the way of that. Um, Jealousy, who's going to get the glory? Who's going? But the question should be the other way around. Who's going to give the most glory? right? That's the only competition we should be in with one another. Who's going to give one another, give themselves to one another better, give themselves for one another better, glorify one another better, give themselves away better, right? Because that's what it looks like to glorify God, is to honor the image of God in one another. And then it's the same with our kids. We don't want to get into rivalries with our kids. We want to bring them into the family rule. Um, and there's so much in ancient literature about how this goes wrong, and it's one of the good reasons to read, ancient literature, to read, Sophocles, um, Aeschylus. You've got these people thinking through the reality of, and they usually have to do it with royal families. They always have to do it with the royal families because those are the only people that truly ruled. Whereas the scriptures teach that all people rule, right? That's inherent in who we are. We are rulers of the world by nature, by created nature. But so we can learn with these reflections on we can learn from these reflections on rulership and how generationally to bring the next generation into the rule that God has given us. It's a very different way to think. Now it always goes wrong. Sophocles and Aeschylus. Um, the story of Oedipus is a dad who doesn't want the competition from his son, and so he sends his son off to be killed. But the slave, the servant who's in charge of killing his son, has more pity than the king, right? And that's an important thing to understand. Is the royal family is supposed to have the most mercy, but this servant has more pity, and so he gives this his baby into the hands of a shepherd who promises to take him far away, takes him to the other side of the mountain. Well, he ends up being adopted into the royal family across the way. And that's because royal, in the ancient world, the understanding was royal blood always shows itself, and so he ends up being adopted, and then ends up killing his dad anyway, even though his dad tried to get rid of him, because they believed there was a fundamental rivalry for power, for rule. There was a rivalry between the Titans and the gods. There's a rivalry between the gods and people. There's a rivalry between kings and their sons. It's all rivalry, and it's only power that can hold it together. Well, um, that understanding is rejected completely by the Bible, right? That there isn't a rivalry, and so instead we look at our kids and we're constantly trying to bring them up into the rule God created them for, and the beginning of that is ruling together with us in our families. So, and that's image of God stuff, right? That's image of God stuff. So as we work through the image of God tomorrow, we're going to be looking at uh, uh, we're going to be looking at Philippians 2 to talk about this some more. We're going to be looking at Colossians 2 as well to talk about this some more. But it's a mindset that says my kids aren't accessories to my life, right? That my kids aren't accessories to my life, but that part of me being made in the image of God is giving myself as a parent for and to the kids that are made in the image of God that God has given me. And it's really common now for people to view their children or treat their children like accessories to their life, like they don't have their own story before the Lord. But acknowledging that they do, and then helping them up into the story of their life that God has created for them, is a really important part of parenting. But we can only do that when we embrace that the image of God is that the family as a unit is the image of God, and then each person in the family is also the image of God, the way God is one and three. So and then it becomes a joy to watch your children grow and succeed and prosper in the world, go through struggles, and to see the Holy Spirit's work in their life. to run up against a difficulty. I got to help a couple of my kids this last week make some really tough life decisions about that they know are going to affect the rest of their life, and you get to sit with them and hear them work through it and ask them questions, because you're hopefully, well, because what you want is when they're very small, you control everything in their life because they're too small and they need somebody to. But as they grow, they're taking on more and more responsibility, and you're shifting to the eventual role is hopefully welcome advisor and friend, right? That's the goal in parenting, is as they head off into the world, you become a welcome advisor, right? You don't have to push yourself on them, and but they want your advice, right? That's what you're after, and that happens by uh, and as they hit their teen years, you're working through stuff with them. You're helping them learn how to think. Or even right before their teen years, you're asking them questions. How are you thinking about this? Why are you thinking about this? That way, have you thought about this in the Bible? Right, so that you're teaching them how to think through issues, and then giving them some space and the freedom to fail, uh, in decisions as they make them, because they're learning wisdom. Now, obviously, if it's like something that there is going to injure them for the rest of their life or something, you want to help them with that. But you're trying to help them learn to make good decisions in the world. Well, when you when you're talking with them and you say, well, this is how, I one of the things that my wife and I have found really helpful is sharing how we learned lessons when we were teenagers, when we were newly married, and then being open as we're learning lessons in the present, really showing them what does it look like to be reflective about the way God has been maturing you and growing you, and then uh, hopefully what you want is, as they hit an age where they're making their own decisions. Every kid's a little bit different, but as they, hit that 17, 18, 19, they're deciding where to go to college, if to go to college, where to go to college, if they want to go into a trade, if they want to, they're starting to, uh, you know, uh, decide, is this somebody I want to date or not date, or is this person that it's not that they're not looking at you saying, hey, am I allowed, right? That they're looking at you and they're saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking, what are you thinking, right? And you have the kind of relationship with your kids where you are a welcome addition of advice, right? That's the goal. And the and one of the big things is when they do make a bad decision, is that if they come to you and you are the person that comforts and helps and says, okay, well, now this is where you're at, I love you, let's help you from this situation, rather than, hey, I told you, right? Because that they're going to grow they're going to kind of grow a hide to your advice if every time they make a mistake you say, hey, I told you, you should have listened. um, Whereas if you say, okay, well, now this is where you're at, I'm happy to help you from here, and if they say what went wrong, you say, well, do you want to know? I'm happy to tell you what I think. Um, but you want them welcoming your advice as they become adults, and that means you have to uh, give them the respect of an adult as a gift as they get older, because you, the number of times you look at your kids and you think you still are a child, but but now you're driving or whatever, you think, how is it that you are a child? um, you have these sorts of things, and you have to just give them the respect of being made in the image of God, the respect of an adult, as a gift, right? Because as grace, because that's what God does to us, right? He is gracious to us. Not because we deserve it, right? And so that actually helps your kids grow into that, um, into a respectable person when they receive respect as a gift. It helps them grow into that respectable person. So, well, obviously, there's a lot of details to work through on that. But when you see your kids as the image of God, and you know that what they're for is rulership, they've been given to the world to rule. Then you'll treat them different. So, all right, we'll talk tomorrow about what that means in Colossians 2, Philippians 2.